Hi everyone, this is Rob, and welcome back to Literal BS, the podcast where we shed some light and uncover what's really happening in the United States today. In a world saturated with information, it's easy to feel lost in big media or to suspect that the narrative you're being fed isn't the full picture. This isn't about partisan shouting matches. This is about informed discussion, critical analysis, and empowering you with the knowledge to understand the systems at play. Because in a free society, an informed citizenry is the ultimate check on power. So, if you're tired of the literal BS and ready for a deeper understanding of what's truly going on, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Today, we're diving deep into the recently passed Big, Beautiful Bill, a piece of legislation that President Trump hails as a monumental achievement but one that has sparked fierce debate and strong reactions across the country. It's a bill that touches nearly every aspect of American life, from your taxes to your healthcare, and it's essential to understand what's really inside, what's in it for everyday Americans. Let's start with what the administration and its supporters say this bill delivers. The core of it, from their perspective, is tax relief. Many of the tax breaks from President Trump's first term are now made permanent, and there are some new ones. No taxes on tips and overtime. This is a big selling point for service industry workers and anyone working extra hours. The idea is to put more money directly into the pockets of hourly and tipped employees. Increased standard deduction. For many Americans, this simplifies tax filing and could mean a larger portion of their income isn't taxed. Child tax credit boost. While some debate the full impact for low-income families, the bill does increase the child tax credit, aiming to provide more financial support for families with children. Business incentives. The bill includes provisions like 100% expensing for domestic research and development and certain investments, aiming to stimulate economic growth, create jobs, and boost wages by encouraging businesses to invest and expand in the U.S. National security funding. A significant portion of the bill is dedicated to national security, including funding for border security and potentially the Golden Dome missile defense system. This resonates with voters prioritizing a strong defense and border enforcement. Supporters argue these measures will lead to a blue-collar boom, giving larger paychecks, stimulating manufacturing, and ultimately creating a more prosperous America for everyone. Let's take a closer look at what all this means for us. The criticisms and potential downsides of the Big, Beautiful Bill, which many are calling the One Big Ugly Bill. This is where it gets really complex and, for many, deeply concerning. Massive increase to national debt. The Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, CBO, estimates this bill will add a staggering $3.3 trillion to the federal debt over the next decade, with some estimates closer to $4 trillion when accounting for interest. This is a huge concern for fiscal conservatives and anyone worried about the nation's long-term financial health. Tax cuts. Critics point out that the immediate tax cuts are substantial, but many of the spending cuts are further down the line. This raises the risk that future Congresses might extend the temporary tax cuts while pulling back on the planned spending reductions, leading to an even larger debt. Higher interest rates. Increased national debt can put upward pressure on interest rates, meaning higher costs for mortgages, car loans, and student loans for everyday Americans. Medicaid cuts. This is perhaps the most contentious aspect. The bill includes $1.2 trillion in cuts, primarily to Medicaid, by imposing work requirements and tightening eligibility. The CBO estimates this could leave an additional 11.8 million to 17 million Americans without health insurance over the next decade. Critics argue that this disproportionately affects the most vulnerable, low-income families, pregnant women, children, the elderly, and people with disabilities. While proponents claim to be targeting waste, fraud, and abuse and promoting work, opponents counter that many on Medicaid are already working or unable to due to health or caregiving responsibilities, and that these cuts will lead to real human suffering and even deaths. Similar to Medicaid, the bill slashes funding for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, through stricter work requirements and eligibility rules. Critics warn this will rip food from the mouths of hungry children, hungry veterans, and hungry seniors. But on the other hand, the wealthy, despite claims of being a middle and working-class tax cut, many analyses suggest the primary beneficiaries of the tax provisions are the wealthiest individuals and corporations. Critics argue this is a massive redistribution of wealth from the poor and middle class to the rich. The permanent extension of certain tax breaks from the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, or TCJA, coupled with new provisions largely favors those at the top of the income scale. Environmental policy. The bill significantly rolls back clean energy tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act (IRA) and even includes subsidies for coal, raising concerns about climate change and the U.S.'s commitment to renewable energy. Student loan changes. The bill discontinues popular income-driven repayment plans like SAVE and limits eligibility for Parent Plus loans, potentially making student debt repayment more challenging for many. IRS Direct File Program. The bill ends the free direct-to-IRS tax filing program, which aimed to simplify tax preparation for millions. Increased complexity. While some provisions aim to simplify the tax code, others, like the no tax on tips and baby bonus accounts, come with new rules and potential IRS guidance that could make tax filing more complicated for everyday Americans. So, when we look at the big, beautiful bill, it's clear there are two very different narratives. On one hand, supporters promise economic prosperity through tax cuts and increased national security. On the other, critics warn of a ballooning national debt, devastating cuts to essential social programs, and a widening wealth gap. For everyday Americans, the impact will vary significantly based on income, health status, and reliance on social safety net programs. It's a bill that will undoubtedly shape the economic and social landscape of the United States for years to come, and understanding its full implications is more important than ever. For many living paycheck to paycheck, the big, beautiful bill presents a trade-off. Some potential for slightly higher take-home pay from tips and overtime, but at the cost of significantly weaker social safety nets. The direct financial gains from the tax changes might be tangible for some, but the risk of losing essential services like healthcare and food assistance poses a much greater, potentially devastating, threat to their financial stability and well-being. The bill's critics argue that it effectively shifts resources from the most vulnerable to the wealthiest, while proponents claim it fosters economic growth that will ultimately benefit everyone. For those balancing their budget week to week, the immediate and tangible impact of reduced access to vital services could far outweigh any marginal tax savings, and we'll be keeping a close eye on how these changes play out in the coming months and years. Join us next time on Literal BS as we continue to break down the policies that impact your life. As we wrap up another episode of Literal BS, let's take a moment to reflect on something that's often discussed, sometimes debated, but always foundational: our rights as U.S. citizens. In a world that feels increasingly complex, where the lines between oversight and overreach can blur, and where the constant hum of information can drown out fundamental truths, it's easy to forget the power we hold. Our rights aren't just abstract concepts debated in courtrooms or enshrined in dusty old documents. They are the very bedrock of our freedom. They have the right to speak truth to power without fear, to assemble and demand accountability, to question authority, and to have our voices heard in the halls of governance. They are the shield against arbitrary power and the foundation for our pursuit of a better life. This is Rob signing off. See you next time.